unless there is a court order. The law would have barred the Charlotte police from releasing video of Keith Lamont Scott's death, as they ended up doing last month before the law took effect. Governor, don't we need more transparency for the police?
We have several things we need to balance, Chuck. First of all, we need to balance the public interest, but we also need to balance the constitutional rights of those who are being investigated. I know CNBC and CNN and Fox would love to show the video right away. It helps your ratings. But the fact of the matter is, we've got a criminal investigation going on right now. And both the DA, the SBI, and the Charlotte Police Department, as we have with other shootings, have to go through an investigation. And let me correct you in your question. It doesn't deny the release of it. It allows a third party to make that decision because, frankly, politicians shouldn't be making that decision, whether it be a mayor or a governor or a DA. It should be an impartial judge who determines where are the constitutional rights of those being investigated that are being seen in the video versus the right of the public to know. And that's exactly what this new law does. I think it's a perfect law. We're going to see some possible gaps, but it's a vast improvement. We had no rules before. And I'm pleased that it got bipartisan support. More Democrats voted for it than anything.
Thank you, Mr. McCrory.
Thank you.
Mr. Cooper.
I'm grateful to the men and women of law enforcement who serve honorably and risk their lives every day to keep us safe. I'm also mindful that there are so many communities out there who feel targeted, and they yearn to be heard, and they yearn for respect. What we need is a governor who's going to work to make sure we have that mutual respect. And part of mutual respect is transparency. We need to make sure that the community trusts what law enforcement is doing. That is why I said there were significant problems with this law, because I believe that the records and these videotapes should be open. Clearly, there are some times when it should be kept confidential, but the presumption should be it is public, because the more transparency you have, the more mutual respect you're going to continue to develop.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. 30 seconds, Mr.
This is typical Roy Cooper. After the law is passed, he expresses concern. By the way, after a shooting, he then expresses concern in front of the FOP. In an interview which was recorded, he says he was in favor of it, trying to get the endorsement of the Federation of Police. By the way, I got that endorsement. And I'm very proud to have not only their endorsement, the endorsement of 5 other major police organizations in North Carolina, because I care for both the victims and I also care for those persons being investigated. And to have it it needs to be taken out of politics.
Thank you, Mr. McCrory. Mr. Cooper, 30 seconds.
I have strong support from law enforcement across North Carolina. Again, Governor McCrory's story is not true. What we have to do is to make sure we earn this mutual respect. Law enforcement needs training. Law enforcement needs support and resources. Law enforcement needs to look like the communities that they protect and serve. And as governor, I'm going to be a strong law enforcement governor, but we also need to make sure that our communities are respected and that they work with law enforcement, with community policing and other ways to make sure our communities are safe.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. I got a couple of, all of these will be 30-second follows for both of you. Mr. Cooper, I'm going to start with you. In the first presidential debate, Hillary Clinton said, "I think implicit bias is a problem for everyone, including police." Do you agree with her?
Well, I think that police definitely needs more training. I think all of us have biases that sometimes conflict with our jobs. We need training. We need to make sure that law enforcement has the resource that it needs. And we also need to emphasize community policing. I think when law enforcement officers work with communities, get to know communities, I think you have safer law enforcement and better law enforcement all the way around.
Okay, do you accept the idea that there's implicit bias?
I think there's bias in all of us. It's not necessarily always racial bias or other types. It might be bias of how we dress, how we look, the environment that we might be in. And those are also tools for our police officers to determine what action to take. And what we have to do, I agree with the Attorney General, we need more training for our police officers. There's never enough training. As Mayor of Charlotte for 14 years, I helped institute community policing, plus as chairman of the Public Safety Community. Community policing is vital, that our police officers get out of their cars, walk the neighborhoods, become problem solvers, and I'm a firm believer in that. But
let me go, final 30 seconds.
But to attack the police officers the way Ms. Clinton did, and frankly our president has done in his very first year in office, was totally inappropriate.
Let me ask you both the same question, which is, what does the term Black Lives Matter mean to you? I'll start with you, Mr. Cooper. 30 seconds.
Well, I think it's a statement that is true. I think what we need to do is to make sure we continue this effort to understand that many communities of color feel targeted. They feel discriminated against. And what they want to be is heard, and what they want to be is respected. So I think there are many in law enforcement who would absolutely agree that this is something that we have to do.
Well, I personally was an admirer of Martin Luther King, who believed we should be judged by the content of our character, not by the color of our skin. And I think all lives should matter. It's our heart inside that matters, and we should value every single human life. But we do have to recognize the anger that communities have within how they interact with law enforcement. But at the same time, we've got to recognize the pressure of our police officers who every day leave their families home not knowing if they're going to come back. And the officers that were most recently involved in shootings, they had no idea that was going to happen to them that day,
Mr. McCrory.
but their lives were also changed.